Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Craig Pera, and this is Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. I'm so honored and privileged to be bringing you this podcast today. We're going to be talking about some really, really important topics, hypersexuality and attachment. And the good news is, guys, and gals, I've got a very, very special guest who's going to be joining us today. I am so insanely proud of my team. And one of the reasons is because everyone on my team, and I've been working with these guys and Tara, George, Adrian, Tara, and Eric, who recently joined us for years. And they all came to me as clients. And that's a prerequisite. You have to have gone through this in order to work with me. That's a prerequisite that must be satisfied. And one of my early clients was this young man, and he came to me at a very low point, which is how people come to me, often at very low points. Suicidal, depressed, plagued with anxiety. And we're talking about a young man. We're talking about a young man who has since become one of my best friends and a member of my family. And which makes this story so cool, but so low. And he couldn't afford our services because he was in a country that has a different dollar and the whole thing. And he was a young guy and he didn't have any money to pay for me. But I got to tell you, this motherfucker was persistent. He was persistent and he was hungry. And by the way, guys, we have scholarship programs. I need you to know that. You look at the price, I can't afford it. We have scholarship programs because I'm not going to turn someone away who's hungry and wants to get well and is attracted and attached to my program. And so I gave this gentleman a scholarship and started working with him. And, this has happened a few times. Where I start working with somebody and I see something special. I just know that son of a bitch, this guy's got potential. But at the same time, right, it's irresponsible of me to during their recovery to say, hey, have you ever thought of doing this for a living? Well, I've got Adrian with us, and that's who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Coach Adrian. He's the guy who came to me in that dark place. He's the guy who just finished his master's of psychology. This is a guy who's now also worked with clients all over the world. He's appeared on the BBC and a whole bunch of other media things in his efforts to impact people, and is just phenomenal. So anyway, Adrian, enough of the introduction. How's it going, brother? Unmute your microphone.
Yeah, I'm great, Craig. Thank you very much for inviting me to do this podcast with you. I'm very happy to be with you guys, and welcome everybody.
And so Adrian's been with me the longest, guys. He runs our Enhanced Accountability Program. That's a program for men in the group coaching program who need just that little right extra level of support. And so listen, this guy just completed his master's dissertation, defended his master's dissertation, and we're going to talk about that today. This is going to be a two-parter, three-parter, four-parter. We're going to keep, you guys are going to see me going forward. I'm going to have more Adrian, more George, more Tara, and some more guests as we go forward, because this is a very exciting time for us. We've experienced explosive growth. We've got, 5-star after 5-star review on Trustpilot, because everybody who works with us gets a chance to review us, and thank goodness those reviews have been so positive, and we worked hard for that. So Adrian, in your studies, and you've got your traditional kind of sex addiction and the limitations of that. What was the most interesting thing? Is there one thing that jumps out at you that you learned in your research? Let's maybe start there, and then we'll back into some of the subjects that we want to talk about in terms of hypersexuality and attachment styles.
Yes.
But what was the biggest maybe surprise
So for me, in my study, I was checking how attachment affects personality organization, so our personality, and then how that personality is connected with sex addiction or compulsive sexual behavior, right? So for
Tell me what
me,
you mean by attachment. I want to break that down, because that's a
yeah.
word that means lots of different things to different people. Tell me about
So So, in definition that was created by John Bowlby, who kind of created that term, attachment. Attachment is a behavior that is oriented towards creating closeness, intimacy, right? So, a child is programmed to behave in a way that will create more closeness with a mother when it's feeling some kind of stress, when it's hungry, when there is a danger happening. So in evolution, right, like you have, animals, they have the same thing, the little ones of dogs or cats, right, they are trying to create bigger proximity, to get closer when there is a danger, there is some kind of stress for them. So the mother responds, and that's how attachment is created. So for humans, attachment is a little bit more complex, because we don't always respond in a best way to our children, and so because of that, the different attachment styles are developed. So in very big shortcut, attachment is this behavior that is evolutionary created, so we can have bigger proximity and be saved from danger. When like a child is in danger, he's going to cry, right, and the mother comes, and then it's safe again. So that's it.
Is it the bonding? Like when I think of attachment, Adrian, I think of the the physical attachment of the scared cub. The scared cub physically attaches to mother, and the emotional attachment is that what we're talking about here? That bonding that occurs in children to their parents, and here we're talking about the mother.
So first, it's more about behavior, right? So it's about just getting close physically, like, being in close proximity physically. And then out of that, the emotional bond is developed. So when a child sees that mother is responsive to his needs, the mother is coming each time the child cries, right? That creates an idea in our little brain, in this little one's brain, that whenever I cry, somebody will help me, somebody will respond. So that person is creating safety for me. I can depend on another human being. So from there, the bond is created, and then that transitions to our adult life. I can't hear you, Craig.
I just, as you were talking, I got it connected with me, and it's something I know, but I just want to share it with the people there. Is so if any of you brothers and sisters out there were adopted, there's this concept, this phenomenon called the primal wound, and the primal wound is, as Adrian's explaining it to me, feels like it's predicated on the primal wound is the absence of that physical attachment, because in most adoptions, certainly back when I was adopted, the baby is taken from the womb and put in isolation, and they were very careful not to create that bonding, not to create that attachment. And while that theory has some legitimate challenges around it, I believe the principle, I believe that first experience with the universe, that first connection, that lack of physical attachment, that lack of emotional attachment, sent me down this path. Sent me down this path, and so I just, I got verklempt, if you will, seeing the babies going to the mother, and for the first 6 years of my life, that wasn't something that I was able to do, and we know how important the first 6 months, how important that time period is. So unfortunately, though, Adrian, right, this attachment isn't always optimal. Is that, so that attachment's important, and well, let me ask you this question: why is it important? Why is healthy attachment important?
Yeah, so it's important because first of all, child tries to bring himself back to balance by using attachment behaviors. A child cries, for example, because it's hungry, right? It tries to bring himself back to balance. So if nobody responds to those cries, nobody gets close, nobody hugs, nobody feeds, or there is an adverse reaction, a parent is not reacting proportionally or is reacting inappropriately to child's needs, then not only child is in this state of lack of balance, right, like disharmony and emotional stress, but also it creates that idea in a child that it can't depend on other people later on, right? Like the relationships are not going to be fulfilling or satisfactory. So we turn to different things later on in life, where we turn to addictions, right, to fulfill that need for safety, or that need to rebalance ourselves with something, right? So that's why healthy attachment is so important. If you have that sense of, I can balance myself, if I show that I'm in distress, somebody will help me, I can balance myself, I can depend on other people, then you deal with your emotions better, you are rebalancing yourself in a healthy way, you can manage your emotions, and you don't need to turn to other things for that. So that's in a big short. And of course, healthy relationships, right? Like if you want to have a healthy relationship, you need to be open, you need to be vulnerable, you need to learn how to depend on other people. And when you don't have that safe attachment, it's really, really hard.
And so it's so obvious, but I just want the people out there, obvious to me and you, I want the people listening to hear that. And for for the partners who are listening, one, I think there's value in a couple of places here. Number one, this gives you an opportunity to reflect on how your attachment patterns in childhood impacted your attachment patterns in adulthood. So I think there's absolutely an opportunity here for you individually. And in the relationship context is better understanding. And listen, we're not making excuses. We're just telling you how it is. This doesn't mean that this is excusing his behavior. This doesn't mean that it's not wrong, that it wasn't a betrayal, that it wasn't lies. But in my partner, I'll tell you, Adrian, in the partner calls that I've been doing lately, because of course you know, but to let the people out there know, we've got this incredibly powerful group coaching program for partners. And we've been having such just open, frank conversations, and they are so desperate and hungry to learn about what's going on in their partners' heads.
Yeah, why, right?
And why? Why? Because there's got to be a better answer beyond he's an effing asshole. There's got to be a better answer than that. And for so long, I'm so blessed to be working with these women now, Adrian, because this is the first time it feels like I have been able to share this with them, because the fear always has been, they're going to say I'm making excuses. They're gonna accuse me of defending the guys. They're going to, be upset with me for, somehow minimizing their pain by explaining what's going on in their partner's heads. And of course, as is, I guess, maybe obvious now, the exact opposite has happened. And so that's the opportunity for the partners. And so is this fatal? Is this like, poor attachment styles? Well, what are the different types of attachment styles that people forge? Maybe some good ones and some bad ones. What are your thoughts on that?
So, I wouldn't say they are good or bad, but, some of them are quite difficult to deal with. That's how I would name it.
Listen, I know Michelle would agree with that wholehearedly. Well, Michelle's my wife, for those of you listening. It's a challenge, but continue, man. Thank you.
Yeah. So, those attachment styles are formed, based on response of the mother or the attachment figure. It's called, in psychology, it's called an attachment figure. So that person that is taking care of you, it can be dad, right? But it has to be a stable person. If there is no stability, there is, like you mentioned, there is an adoption, you are left, that creates the whole different story, and people try to cope with that in creating different attachment styles that are not very healthy or helpful for them. So I would say that first 3 years of life, like in the literature, first 3 years of life are crucial for creating attachment, and it's quite stable during life. 72% of people have, like in studies, have shown that it's like a stable thing for them. It doesn't change over time, but there is hope, fortunately, because not only our friendships and relationships with broader family affect us later on, right? If you have a great uncle or an aunt, right, or a grandparent, and that person is providing you that love and safety, that can help you to rework your attachment a little bit. Or you have a great friend later on, right? That can help you to form this healthy, safe attachment. And later on, of course, in your relationship with your partner and with coaches, therapists, all those people that are really close to you, you can recreate that healthy attachment that you missed before, and kind of, change the way you're relating with people. But it's not easy, and it takes time. Now, I want to talk about those attachment styles, because we mentioned that, but we didn't say what it is exactly. So, after having those primary 3 years, usually you create some style of responding to people, like style of reacting when you're feeling low or stressed, a style of depending on others, you may say. And that is called attachment style. And there are 4 attachment styles. Like basically in literature, there are 4 attachment styles that we develop, and we can classify people in those 4 attachment styles. So obviously the best one and the healthiest one for people is safe attachment style, right? And that safe attachment style is defined as attachment style that creates sense of comfort with intimacy. You're not worried about rejection. You're not too preoccupied with relationship. You are also less. I would say. Okay, I'll cut it out, and we can repeat. There is greater satisfaction from relationship, less conflict, and lower chance of relationship breakup or divorces. Right. So those are the things that are helpful in this safe attachment style. People are usually handling their emotions better. People who have safe attachment style have a greater sex life, greater satisfaction from relationships. Overall, in general, they're happier with their lives, right? So, that attachment style is where we should head. That's a healthy one that is created if the mother is responsive and caring and loving, and the family also is supportive, like those things that we need to develop a healthy personality and healthy attachment. The other styles are unsafe, we can say, but there are 3 unsafe attachment styles. There is avoidance style. So, for people who have avoidant attachment style, it's about avoiding closeness, right? So they created that strategy of relating with people because the mother was missing, or because nobody was caring, nobody was fulfilling their needs when they really needed that. So they decided they're going to become independent from relationships. They are not going to depend on people. They can count only on themselves, right? So, that avoidant person would say that I am uncomfortable being close to others. I find it difficult to trust and depend on others. And I prefer to the others not to depend on me. And it's very important for me to feel independent and self-sufficient. And usually my partner wants more intimacy than I can stand, right? Can connect with that. I know many guys, that are struggling with porn addiction or sex addiction can really connect with that style, that they feel intimacy is something scary, something that they don't know how to cope with, and how to open up, right? How to really open up and start depending on others. So, avoidant people usually have that problem. They want to be independent. They want to be kind of free from all the ties and those things that are connected with being in a relationship.
Let me ask you a quick question about that, Adrian, before you go on, because
sure.
You're absolutely right. The guys listening, at least a whole bunch of them got their hands up saying, "Yeah, that's me."
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think's the impact of? So now we've got clarity around the impact of that weak attachment, and for men, that weak attachment is magnified by a toxic masculinity where vulnerability is weak. where, you know, boys crying, that's feminine, you know, are one of our most important attributes that we need for a long-term successful relationship is not only impacted in the development of the child in terms of his relationships with the authority figures in his life. There's also a cultural theme that a lot of men get, which is, you know, independence, don't depend on anybody, being vulnerable is for pussies. You know, and I'm using the language that I received as a child. Crying was, you know, at the time when I'm 47, when I was a kid, that was gay, you know, like that. Oh my God. You know, the worst possible thing you could say, to somebody. And of course, I'm speaking of that term in its historical context and believe it's inappropriate to clarify to use in any way, shape, or form. But that's what so many of our men are getting. So the combination of the weak attachment that so many of us got, or the poor attachment with that culture of toxic masculinity, and I don't know, we're never gonna have time to get into the, you know, what came first, the chicken or the egg, but that combination must be is lethal, isn't it?
Yeah, like usually, you know, the attachment is formed, like I mentioned, like in those early years, and then that toxic masculinity of the culture, you know, prevents you from changing your attachment style, prevents you from, you know, maybe opening up to people and reworking that with somebody, right? So I think the culture keeps you stuck in that attachment style, and the family, of course, right? If, you know, avoidant men are creating more avoidant men, right? Like if you have a father that never shared his emotions with anybody and has a hard time being open, then, you know, the same thing is going probably to happen to you. You're going to be, you know, raised in that way. But, you know, in general, I would say that, yeah, the attachment will go first, then the culture, and that as a combination can be something that really screws up our lives. So we need to let go of those concepts because they are not useful for healthy people. Like healthy people can show their emotions. They're not afraid of that. And they know that there are people that they count on. And that's part of being, you know, like a healthy human being and having a good life is just having people around you that you care about and that, you know, care about you, right? Otherwise you're very isolated, and that's a very sad life.
So was there another attachment style that you wanted to share? I cut you off, and then I want to tie this into the compulsive sexual behavior and set up our next podcast. Any other styles that we talked about? Avoidance. What else do they need to know on the negative side?
So there is a fearful attachment style, and it's exact opposite, right? So, you know, let's imagine a situation. A child is very lonely or hungry, and it cries, right? And the mother doesn't come, and it doesn't come for hours. And the child gets that idea, well, you know, maybe she will never come. Maybe I will stay there alone. So one child will say to himself, well, I have to be independent. I can't depend on others. I have to be independent. I have to fulfill my own emotional needs. The other one can become clingy, you know, like just, I want to be with my mother all the time. I will not leave her. I will not give her even an inch, you know. I am so anxious that she's going to leave me again that I'm not going to let that happen. I will almost like get so close that I almost merge with the mother, right? So that happens when somebody has a fearful attachment style. That person craves intimacy, but is very insecure about relationship, about rejection, very clingy type of relationships come out of that. And of course, if you become that extremely close with somebody, usually others are reluctant to get as close to you. They feel choked, right? It's almost like being with a poison ivy, right? Like they get choked because of so much, you know, closeness, and you give no space. So what happens because of that is usually those people reject us, abandon us, and the whole cycle continues, right? They have that fear of abandonment. They get very close to avoid that abandonment, and they get abandoned. So the fear is increasing over time. So that need for closeness scares people away. And I think that for people who are struggling with compulsive sexual behavior, it's a less, it's less common to have that style. But I noticed that for some partners, it's a style that they are describing. They are they want to be very, very close all the time. And that is also creating difficulties for somebody, that wants to connect in a healthy way, because we all need to have our own personal space. It's not like we should be together all the time, or we can't leave for 1 minute, otherwise the world will fall apart. So that's a fearful style. That's the second unsafe attachment style. And there's a third one, which is a perfect storm, I would say, a combination of two of them. So you can imagine an avoidant person that wants to be independent and fearful person that's very clingy, right? But now we are talking about both of those things in one person. So this is called ambivalent attachment style. So people who are ambivalent are, first, they are very clingy. They want to, get as close as they can to a person. But then when the person engages into relationship with them and gets closer, they reject the person. They run away. So, first they want to get close, then they get scared of that, and they reject, and they get, they avoid, right? And that kind of is shifting and switching, and you never know which one you're going to receive. So that creates a very unstable, chaotic, and difficult relationships, right? A person never knows whether you're going to be, you're going to be in need of closeness, or you're going to be in need of space, because, those needs are so strong, it's really hard to cope with them for a partner. So that's this third unsafe attachment style, which is called ambivalent attachment style. And that's all. Those are all the styles.
I mean, what a perfect storm, because as you're talking, I'm hoping that the guys listening can see that, it's why I like the term intimacy disorder better than I like sex addiction and porn addiction, because the sex addiction and porn addiction is symptom centric, and there are other terms as well that make sense. But I hope you guys listening, look back and think about, which attachment style you might have. And what I love about the work that we do, Adrian, because not only do we look at what styles that they might be, what bucket they might fall into, but looking at the habits that style produce, so they can counterbalance, break a habit, make a habit, so they can counterbalance that initial step. And the way I described it with me is, my first step is away from love. My first step, that conflict, like, boom, I'm away. Too much intimacy and love, I step away. So I had to use my awareness of that, like, guttural, instinctual reaction to counterbalance. And that's the value of understanding what patterns, what habits of attachment that you exhibit. And it's clear to us, but just so the people listening can make it clear, how do those styles create a sex addict or a porn addict? I mean, it's obvious, but just kind of walk us through how this becomes the preferred method of connecting or escaping versus with another person.
Yes. So, as I spoke before, if you, in your development, you create that idea that talking about your needs, or showing that you have needs, or connecting with others will be ultimately unfulfilling, right? Then you turn to other things. And some people turn to drinking, right? Like they drink alcohol. Some people turn to drugs. And for us, that attachment styles connected with some early sexual traumatic experiences, like being touched, right? Or sexualization of the society, like people around you talk about sex a lot, or, in general, just being
or the opposite, right? The religious shame.
Yeah, or no talk about sex. And that's like a secret that you want to uncover because it's so fascinating, right? And there is, of course, if you uncover the pornographic materials, whatever that is, if you have that awakening of sexuality too early when you're not ready, or you were somehow, traumatized in that area, and you also have that unsafe attachment style, then you're probably going to develop compulsive sexual behavior, because, you know that, for example, you can't depend on people. You have some fixation, some focus on sexuality because you were either traumatized or you uncovered sexuality too early. So, well, what can I do? No, but I can't depend on anybody. So I will try to depend on pleasuring myself, for example, masturbation or watching porn, or I will try to reenact those traumas with somebody. those sexual traumas later on, right? So I would say that, that unsafe attachment, then with some unhealthy exposition to sexuality, that creates a sex addict, so to speak, or somebody who struggles with compulsive sexual behavior. So, that affects our sexual development later on. And of course, that affects how we express our sexuality, what we do in the sexual area. And of course, there are two strategies, whenever you're frustrated in sexual area. And for people who are having unsafe attachment styles, those strategies are either hyperactivation. So those people try to, engage in more sexuality to lower their sense of stress. They want to engage in having more sex, so they create this sense of intimacy or closeness, or I don't know, they want to just to engage in a lot of sex so they can forget about, their needs not being met, right? So, that's the hyperactivation strategy. And there is desactivation strategy, which means, you want to avoid sex because, you know that you're unfulfilled. You are not trying to connect with other people because that's going to be traumatizing to you. So you deactivate and you're kind of, stuck in that sense of sexual coldness, so that doesn't, I would say doesn't appear too often for people who are struggling with compulsive sexual behavior. But, one side of it can be also having that cynical approach to sex, that sex is not going to give you intimacy. It's not going to give you connection because, you can't depend on anybody. You can't depend on creating intimacy with people. So I will engage in cynical sex, without intimacy. I will have sex with random people, or I will have sex with prostitutes, like those kind of random hookups. All those sexual experiences can be created out of that sense that sex will be ultimately unfulfilling and we will not create intimacy. So as I'm speaking, guys, probably you notice there are so many factors that are affecting, how we develop as sexual beings. But I would say, if I would kind of make a pinpoint step after step, when first there is an attachment, then you have the culture and the early exposure or some kind of sexual trauma. And then later on, you either, decide that you have to engage in more sex, so you finally get that intimacy that you were missing as a child, right? Or you decide that you're never going to get that intimacy, so you're going to engage in sexuality that is deprived of it, and you're just going to have random hookups, or maybe not have sex at all and avoid that area altogether, because nobody will give you that sense of happiness and intimacy and attachment. Right? So that's how those two things are connected together.
And, as you're talking, Adrian, I'm thinking about the emotional intelligence, the level of emotional intelligence that men have when they come into the program. When we talk about intimacy, and not all, but many, intimacy, vulnerability, unmet needs. It's like the everyone's seen the dog meme where the dog tilts his head and he's like, what? Like what are you even talking about? And these parts of them are so poorly developed that it takes a bit to even begin to bring them around to them awakening to the existence of these concepts. And that's a wonderful journey to watch unfold. And they realize that there's such a massive gap in their lives around connection. And the interesting thing, brothers, is, as I hope you can plainly see as you're, putting some of these pieces, of the puzzle in your head, this doesn't just affect you. This doesn't just affect you in your primary relationship with your intimate partner. This affects how you attach to your children, how you attach to friends, how you relate at work. And that's why we've been on this mission to expand men's view of this problem, because so many people think it's a libido problem, and there's an aspect of it, of course, but it is not. It is not. Of course, healthy sexuality is the destination, but that destination needs to be built on a solid understanding of self and a proactively counterbalancing and reprogramming, for lack of a better word, the input that's producing the output. And the good news is, Adrian, right, that when men understand this, and by the way, there's a same similar patterns with the women as well, the partners, and there's a really powerful awakening for them too. There's hope, isn't there, for these folks? I mean,
yes, definitely there is hope. And, if you notice that you have one of those unsafe attachment styles, then, I think that's a powerful awareness. And if you notice that, don't worry, but work on it with somebody. You can rework those attachment styles. You can develop a safe attachment style with somebody later on in life. And therapists and scientists are proving that as well, that some people, for 27% of those people from the study, it was possible to change their attachment style. So be those 27 or 25% of people, be one of them. Focus on working with a professional coach, with a counselor, with a therapist, with whoever you feel safe with your partner, to create that safe attachment, and we can, of course, guide you there. We can heal you and hope that, you're going to create a different pattern for yourself. We have good tools for that.
Well, listen, guys, I'm running an experiment too, and we're going to have Adrian back. We're going to be talking about this subject again. You're going to be seeing a lot more of him on these podcasts, just because he's brilliant. He's an amazing coach, and he's my best friend and brother, and I love him. I love him so much. I can't wait till he comes to visit me from Poland soon, and it's just always a privilege to see him. For the first person that contacts me and mentions podcast with Adrian or YouTube video with Adrian, wherever you're consuming this recording, I'm going to take 50% off our group coaching program, period. The total amount, whether you pay in installments, whether you pay all at once, I'm going to knock 50% off for the first person. That's just almost $1,000 of savings. So for the first person, so reach out. You can connect with me on the Contact Me part of the website, www.themindfulhabit.com, and the Contact Us box. Get there, reach out to me, find me. It's one new person who's interested in taking action. And well, Adrian, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you
for being here. So blessed and privileged that you're on the team. Guys, Adrian runs this, I told you, this enhanced accountability program that he's been building over the years, just getting it better and better and dialing it in so he can get you where you want to be fast. So thank you for listening. Use this information to embrace your power of choice and feed the right wolf inside you. I'll see you in another week. And bye, everybody.
See you guys.